Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. It's 11 o'clock. I'm here for our daily Facebook Live COVID conversations. During this Westchester impacts of the coronavirus outbreak, we've had these interviews each day with different people that are involved in the governmental structure and the public life of Westchester County. And today we have with us a good friend of mine, a man who served as a number of different positions in the county government, but for most of his career, doing what he's doing now as Commissioner of our Department of Probation's Rocco Pozzi. Rocco, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for the invite, and it's always good to be with you, boss.
So Westchester County as a government has lots of different diverse functions, and I don't think the average Westchester resident, whoever that might be geographically or demographically, really understands the scope of all the things Westchester does. I would suspect most of our residents realize that we have county parks because most every resident can access a park at some level. Maybe everybody doesn't ride a bus, but they see a Beeline bus going through their community. But I would suspect that unless your life's experience has put you in a certain direction, you don't really realize that we have a Department of Probation. But anytime you have a corrections function, you have to have a probation function to go along with it, so that when people pay their official debt to society, that there is a post-debt period that the society has an interest in how that person functions, because we ultimately would like to prevent recidivism and then continuing that cycle. So in many ways, Rocco, as I view the law enforcement trio of public safety, corrections, and probations, yours may be the trickiest of all, because the people you're dealing with are back out in the community with some of the same pressures that might have put them into an incarcerated situation. But now you and the people that work with you have to deal with them with all the pressures still out there that they once faced. So tell me a little bit now, under normal circumstances, it's a tough job. What is this job now like when you're dealing with an outbreak of COVID-19, where people might test positive, where there's safety, there's a host of issues along those lines?
Well, right now we're still providing a high level of services to the people who are placed in our care and custody. With the state working with us very closely and relaxing some of the regulations around, the need to have face-to-face contacts, we are now able to utilize a lot of the electronic devices that are available to us, either phone calls, FaceTime, any other type of technology that we could use to maintain contact with people who are placed under our supervision. So, the good news is that I don't think we've skipped a beat. We've been able to adjust. We've been able to, get the things done that we need to do. And not only for the people who are on probation, but also the services that we need to provide, to the courts, because, even though I work for the executive branch of government, the probation department's primary customer are the courts, and the
Right.
people who were sent to the probation department, through the court. So, we've been able to continue to do the things that we need, to help the court as they work virtually too through this.
Rocco, and I know it's a generalized question, and I'm not looking for statistics as much as a general gut feel that you have. What is the sense of probationers staying true to their probationary requirements or violating probation, given this particular moment in time? Is it happening more? Is it happening less? Or is it about the same as always?
No, I would say that most of the people, are cooperating with the methods that we are using now to maintain contact, with them, and, not only to keep up with what they're doing and to make sure that they're not causing any problems in our community, but also as they go through these tough times, probation officers become a key conduit for them to get services that still might be available to them in the communities. One of the things that we're doing right now, and I think, when we talk probation, a lot of times, people associate us with the criminal side of the business. People lose sight the amount of work, the enormous amount of work that we do in the family courts, in trying to help people gain access to the family courts, and we have officers even right now as we speak that are speaking to people on the phone that are calling in and need services. And even if it's not a probation service, we're directing them where to go to get the services. We even get phone calls for parole, that they're trying to find, their parole officer, which has absolutely nothing to do with that. You and I know that's a state function, but
Right.
We're helping people. We're directing them, where to go to get the help that they need to get. So, not only are we doing the primary work that we do in the criminal courts and supervising people that are placed on probation, but we're also, supporting our communities and helping people gain access to services while we're doing this.
Let's talk a little bit too about the young people that are in your care and responsibility. Obviously, there's a great desire to divert young people away from entering the criminal justice system. And there are lots of, critical issues out there. I guess education is an important part of the tool, but to deal with gangs, sexual trafficking, and then issues like social media, which didn't exist 20 years ago. And as that leads to issues that have always existed, like drinking and driving and so forth. How are you dealing with the whole issue of youth diversion and youth counseling as part of that supervision, as part of your responsibilities?
Well, one of the fears that I had going into this was not as much with the adult population as it was with the juveniles, with them not being in school, not having the diversions that they usually have available to them to keep them occupied and keep them out of trouble. I just had a sense that we might find ourselves getting more, kids in trouble and getting more petitions. The good news is that we're busy, but we're not seeing, a big uptick in the number of arrests that are occurring, with the juvenile population. And the other good news is, even though we are not seeing a lot of these kids face to face, we are still able to do a lot of adjustments, work with families, work with the kids, so that we're adjusting the cases so it's not necessary for us to bring them into the courthouse or to have a virtual hearing with a family court judge to make a disposition and try to find out what we're going to do with that child. So the good news is we're diverting as many cases now as we were before the COVID virus hit us. So, and like I said, we're glad that we're not getting swamped with a lot more cases than we thought we were going to get. But, business has been constant. But the good news is that we're still diverting as many kids as we did before.
We've heard also in this time frame, Marco, that because so many of us are sheltering in place, we're in close proximity now to our spouses, significant others, and that there has been a rise in domestic violence. There's been an increase in victimization, generally men toward women. Are you seeing that in the world that you live in it? And if so, how are we responding to that?
Yes, we are seeing it. And I hate to say this is good news, because it's never good news when you have to deal with domestic violence situations. We have set up a network where victims who need to file, for a temporary order of protection that they may need to get from the court, we've been able to set up a system that allows people to gain access, through the telephone, to make a call. We have a number available that is on our website. If people show up at the courthouse, it's pasted all over, our family court operations for a number that they can call. They will get direct access to a supervisor who will guide them through the process to get their case into the court so that a judge can make a decision on whether or not they can get a temporary order of protection. Our philosophy, which you support, is when a victim comes, or a potential victim comes to our office and they're seeking access of the court, no one is denied access to the court. It is not my job. It's not the probation officer's job to make a determination on whether or not a temporary order of protection is needed for a victim. That is a decision that is made by a judge. And the one thing that we make sure that we do, any victim that comes to our office will get to see a judge.
And with the court system, shut down in its traditional way, I understand that the courts now have been operating with a virtual reality, which is new to them and new to the to the people that are involved in the system. How has that changed the way you function with with the courts primarily closed but open through the visual virtual reality?
And again, we haven't skipped a beat. The way we work very closely with Judge Davidson and all the folks in the court. We've been able to set up a network where once we have all the information that we need in order to get that petition before a judge, we can electronically send that over to a clerk who will calendar that case, and the judge will will review the circumstances for that victim and then render a decision, on whether or not a temporary order of protection will be granted. And then once that order is granted, it will be electronically sent to the police for them to be able to serve that temporary order of protection. So, we've done real well in adapting, to having to not have our usual face-to-face contacts with people. But the good news is that, people are gaining access to us and they're gaining access to the court so they can get their day in court.
I assume in some contexts, there still needs to be face-to-face contact, not as widespread as normal, but at some level. To what extent does that still have to happen? And then to what extent are you protecting your workforce from the potential of COVID transmission?
Well, all the probation officers right now are working remotely. They have access to laptops. They have access to and Zoom and everything else, that is available to us. So, individuals that are under our supervision that have access, to that are being seen that way. So we're using all the technology that we can, and if it's necessary, if there's an emergency, probation officers, can get out into the community, and deal with issues if they need to do that. So far, I think most of the probationers, have been following our rules and regulations and the governor's, pause, staying at home and, not getting themselves in trouble. So, we've been able to have a positive outcome, in using this technology and keeping in touch with people that way.
And I know we consider our probation office as part of our first responders team. And local government first responders usually means police, fire, and EMS. We do have a police function at the county level. We have an emergency services department. We do fire training, but we don't directly fight fires with county personnel. But in terms of first response, probation officers are part of that first response in the same way that a Department of Health people are part of that response. I know we've set up an antibody testing program in concert with Westchester Medical Center. It is optional. Have many of the probation officers gone through that to have antibody testing?
I think a number of them have gone through. We made it available to everyone. We left it up to the individuals on whether or not they wanted to, get the antibody test. I went through it. I was negative. So
we're on Zoom, so that's good either way.
Yeah. So, but that's okay. I don't mind sharing. I'm, that was good news because I'm paying attention to you and the governor and trying to behave myself and locking down. But, I think a large number of probation staff did avail themselves to the testing.
Well, we're all going through in the society, much less in our respective responsibilities, an area for which there is no roadmap. I'd love to be able to go back and say, gee, what did we do back in 1977, the last time this happened, or go back to 1956, the last time that it happened. And, what did Ed McCallion do, or what did Bella do? But, those things aren't there. We're making our own ground here, department by department, person by person, day by day. We obviously hope that we'll be through this in a reasonable time, but, the scientists tell us there could be a second wave, and we really don't know. We just have to try to function as best as we can. Any final comments, Rocco, open-ended from your standpoint? You've been involved in the field of probation. You've done a corrections stint, and you know law enforcement over all these years. This is obviously a very different time for all of us. Any closing thoughts that you have about your tasks?
Well, I wanted to let you know right now, the senior staff is planning our return. I mean, at some point, we're coming back to the offices. So right now, we're trying to plan along with your staff, with Joan and the rest of the staff on how we're going to, make this a safe environment, for not only probation officers, but for all the county employees that are going to be coming back, to work full time again in our offices. So we're planning now, we're working on that. I am extremely proud, of my senior staff and all of my people in the probation department, because they've been able, under some difficult circumstances that all of us are experiencing, to be able to continue to provide, the supervision, to provide the services. The unique business of probation is not only are we law enforcement, but we're a helping agency too. People who come to us, that need services, as much as it is our responsibility to hold them accountable, not to commit any more crimes or get in trouble again, it is also our responsibility to make sure that we get them the help that they need. And not only them, sometimes their families. So I don't think we've skipped a beat with that. And I'm really proud of that.
Well, Rocco, we're very proud of the work that you, your executive team, and the men and women of probation have done. You've really done an exemplary job. I hope in the right context, I'll be able to share that with folks in person. And I look forward, as you do, as we all do, for us to get a full handle on the health problems. We can go back to normal. I can get a haircut here, which I desperately need.
I need one
10
too.
weeks. And we can even go out and have a bite to eat together. So that would be nice, and hopefully sooner rather than later.
And I just want to tell you, your staff has been wonderful. I know how hard they're working. They're doing a great job. I can tell you the support that I get, from, the Deputy County Executive and Joan and Blanca and the whole group that you've assembled up on the 9th floor. They've been wonderful to work with, and it's been great. And they've made a very difficult thing for us. I wouldn't say real easy, but it could have been a lot more difficult if we didn't have people like you brought into the government working with us now. So I thank you for that, boss.
Rocco, thank you again. We've been talking with Rocco Pozzi, who's our Commissioner of the Department of Probation, as part of our COVID conversations. We'll continue this dialogue. Tomorrow, we're going to be speaking with Elisa Kesson from Volunteer New York, who's been very involved with us in our outreach efforts into the business community to try to help some of the small businesses be able to apply for SBA loans. And so that's yet another aspect of all of this. And I'll be back at 2 o'clock today. We'll be live from the White Plains YWCA, where we have established a child care program at the direction of the state to provide child care services for first responders, so that mom and dad, the first responders, can go to work, even though there's no school, and the children can get proper child care. And we'll be there with Rosie Finizio from our team and some other individuals, Maria Imperial of that organization. So many different aspects of what we're trying to do today. Rocco, we appreciate. Tomorrow, we'll talk about the next round of things. 2 o'clock today, we'll give you some updates on where we are with our testing numbers. And as we continue to try to stay ahead of this virus that has changed our lives, hopefully temporarily, and in a way that we can overcome. And I do believe we will overcome it. I'm George Latimer, County Executive. Thanks for tuning in. See you a little bit later. Stay safe.